Thank you everyone for joining today's section. I just want to especially appreciate you once again for continued engagement with emoji so far. And a number of you have been telling me how you've really like the nature of the emojis and some of the materials that we provided. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. That feedback is really useful. Yeah, it keeps us going, and we're here to support you anyway. Today's section, so we'll be looking at in this lecture. So I want to look at something really important. I want to look at the issue of organizational resilience. So that's what the topic is about. And I'm Steve Oluwaseun and I'm here to provide you all the necessary support and all the necessary insight that you need to navigate through the process of managing, understanding how to manage organizations. And one of the ways that we can manage organizations that is really crucial at the heart of every organization these days is the issue of organizational resilience. In previous lectures, we looked at organizations in crisis. We try to understand the nature of crisis and why crisis management is really important. And also, we try to look at, I tried in that lectures to distill some different things that managers needs to be aware of, and also try to look at different framework of organizational growth by Craner's models of organizational growth. We'll also look at the Wilson and Johnson frameworks of organizational decline. We'll look at the natures of crisis, and we also look at some pointers in terms of crisis component. And I also try to explain what managers needs to be aware of in terms of understanding the crisis process. So having done that and look at organizations in crisis, in today's lectures, we're looking at something that is really at the heart of every organization need it now. Is just a matter of necessity, and that is the question of organizational resilience. So, what is organizational resilience? So, what is our learning outcome for today? We'll be looking at that very shortly. So, let's look at our learning outcome. So, I want you to be at the end of this since I want you to be able to understand what organizational resilience is and understand the purpose of organizational resilience, why it matters. And of course, we need to be able to appreciate the need for organizational resilience in today's business environment, business dynamic environment. Organizations need that resilience. I'll be explaining that as we progress in the course of this section. So I'm excited and I hope that you are. So sit back, relax while I explain to you. So organizational resilience is actually conceptualized as a strategic objective. Is usually as a strategic objective that is something that is intended to help organizations to survive and prosper before, during, and after disruptions and crises. Normally, you hear the word resilience is usually what comes to mind is being able to experience one form of bounce back from adversity, bounce back from crisis, bounce back from disaster, and is ingrained should be ingrained in every organization. And how organization develop that is something that is absolutely important. Normally, is seen as the ability, and the way we conceptualize it is seen as the ability of organization to anticipate, to prepare for, and respond and adapt to everything from minor everyday events to acute short or crisis or chronic incremental change that may have a substantial impact on the organization's survival. So that is something that business leader needs to be very, very aware of, needs to be mindful of, and needs to be very aware of. So that being said, well, I'm going to proceed now to look at other areas of resilience. So one of the frameworks that I will refer you to is the British Standard. So the British Standard on organizational resilience is called BS 116 5000. So that can define organizational resilience as 65,000 defined organizational as the ability of organization to anticipate, to prepare for, respond, adapt to incremental change and sudden disruption in order to survive and prosper. But this definition is actually telling. One of the things that is telling in the sense that organizational resilience is not just something that organizations do post crisis. It's something that organizations also do before. It helps them to survive and prosper. And of course, it's not just organization that alone that needs resilience. Individual needs resilience to be so that you'll be able to withstand adversity and shock and issues that may want to challenge us. So most organizations, resilience is very crucial in that particular regard. So again, there are different areas that different frameworks that are out there that you could look at, you could pick out. There is the ISO, which is International Standard Organization Standard on the 22301 of business continuity. These all form all components of organizational resilience. There is the ISO for disaster recovery, and there is ISO for service continuity. We see service continuity is absolutely important. Overall business continuity is important. Issues around information security as organizations now are forced into digitization to embrace digital transformations. Security, information security is absolutely essential for most organizations now for their survival. And issues around risk management, ISO 1100 as well, is absolutely integral form part of organizational resilience that all these collectively incident management, all these collectively help an organization to contribute to be able to adapt to what things that they're doing. So these are absolutely essential part that most companies need to be very, very aware of. So what resilience why is we've seen earlier on, I said it's something that is the ability to effectively absorb shock, economic shock, major disruptions and disasters. And of course, develop new capabilities. If you look at issues of COVID, for example, companies are now trying to develop new capabilities. They are not trying to create new market opportunities. They are not trying to, in the process, trying to survive and try to prosper despite the presence of complicated and turbulent or certain environments in which they operate. That's the way I conceptualize resilience. In the fact that there are some underlying the word complicated, underlying the word uncertain and turbulent environment, but companies are looking at how best do we reconceptualize our business ideas, our business model in terms of the way our business make money. How do we actually create new market opportunity, maybe by creating a different line of products? How do we actually serve our customers much more better or in a different, slightly different way, but still provide value and offer value to our customer? And all these can help businesses to bounce back from crisis, to bounce back from adversity or major setback or major disaster. And that's why, and that is what resilience is. That is what is at the heart of resilience. So resilient organizations are normally able to they move beyond survival. They actually prosper despite the presence of complicated or uncertain and turbulent environments. They can easily navigate because of some of the things that I've mentioned already. Now, they because resilient organizations, one of the things with resilient organizations is that they can able to maintain positive adjustment, if you like, positive adjustment under challenging conditions, and research has proved that. And they thrive in part because they have faced and overcame serious challenges, serious crises, serious disasters. So that is why they thrive, and they understand the art, they understand the science, they understand the practice of navigation in the midst of crisis. So resilient organizations are normally able to do this. They are able to do this. They are able to innovate. They are able to bring in teamwork. They are able to uh, promote creativities, promote skills within the organizations. They are able to um, promote ethical behaviors within the organizations as well, because that can, unethical behavior obviously can have an impact on organizational reputation, for example, and that obviously, if there's a major issues that can cause massive loss to the organizations as well. You can issue of reputation is not something that reputational risk is not something that organizations joke with. We see in the Volkswagen emissions scandal, for example, is a typical classical example of how reputational risk can affect major organization. So normally you have issues around contingency planning and resilience, which is very instrumental. I've mentioned something around continuity of operation, disaster recovery. For example, cyber incident is very common these days. These are areas that organization needs to think about. Business continuity, crisis communication. These are crisis communication is there, business continuity is there, and of course you also have issues around critical infrastructure protection and software information management and other aspects. These are all various components of what we constitute an effective resilient component for organizations. So organization needs to be very mindful of these, needs to be very aware of this, needs to take this very seriously. As a manager, you need to have an effective crisis communication plans in place for your organizations, effective business continuity plan for the organizations, and also try to look at other areas that the business may be vulnerable, and you put up a plans in place that can help the business to navigate. So that being said, we have to look at other things, some of the things that we need to be aware of. So why does organizational resilience matters? Why is it essential? One of the reasons I've been given in the literature is that it helps the business to minimize disruption to core business operations. So you can imagine a resilient organization that have an effective business continuity plan, effective disaster plans in place, cybersecurity plans in place, information management systems. They have disaster management plans in place, and all the necessary ingredient, all the necessary component that they need. They have all that in place, and the resources and the capabilities and these keys, and with the right set of key sets with the leaders within the organization, these organizations will be well prepared compared to organizations that don't have these things in place. Therefore, these organizations should be able to minimize any form of disruption to their core business operations. So that is why organizational resilience matters in this context. And of course, that can help to protect the organization long-term sustainability or survival or business continuity, if you like, as well. So, of course, organizational resilience in the way as well, because the resilient organizations is support the organization's strategic goals. Because one of the strategic goals of organization, obviously, is the issue of continuity. As a going organization, as a going concern, as a going concern entity, as an entity that wants to survive, that want to stand the test of time. So resilience is matters to support that strategic goals and objective of the organization in that regard. I hope that makes sense to you. But these are some of the reasons why organizational resilience actually matters for organization. And of course, we've seen physical protect physical assets and infrastructure of the organization. If you have a proper disaster plan in place, for example, that is another reasons that you can help to protect and the capabilities within the organizations. It may not be physical assets, it may be something related to capability, for example, where you're putting up a successor plans in place in case an employees leave, key employees or key workers within the organization, they leave. You have appropriate successor plans in place so that there's no knowledge gap there. The knowledge within the organization, the dynamic capability of the organization is well captured, right? Is well captured. Imagine what will happen to Apple, for example, if there are no clear successive plans in place to retain key workers that are the heart of innovations, that are heart of, if suddenly the most innovative people in Apple left the company, you can imagine what's going to happen to the companies, because these are companies that pride itself on innovation. So this is some of the reasons why organizational resilience actually matters in terms of, because it helps to protect the assets or the infrastructures or the dynamic capabilities of the organization, the unique characteristics of the organization in itself. And of course, that obviously leads to the issue of reputation protection and image of the organization itself, because a resilient organization that can withstand time, that obviously can help businesses in a way that you know properly that yes, our reputations and image is intact because we have resources in place, we have plans in place, we have continuity agendas in place to be able to manage whatever things that may come to us. Right. Whatever things that may come to us, we have those things in place. That is absolutely essential in that regard. So it matters in that sense. And it can secure the future operation of the business as well. I've mentioned that. And also the issue of competitiveness of the organization. It can also help to contribute to that, because it makes the organizations much more competitive in a way that other non-resilient firms will not be able to compete. And the literature and the empirical evidence around this area is quite clear. This is an area that I actively research on. And finally, coherence and aligned operational strategic objectives is another areas that it helps to align the different aspects of the organization to help together to bring in operational and strategic aspects we discuss in week two of the lectures, where we look at planning and goal settings. We look at why. We look at operational and strategic plans and objective and the difference between them. So resilience is something that can help to connect that. So if you haven't looked at the haven't had a look at lecture two, which in the discussions I talked about planning and goal settings, and of course we go on to discuss planning and goal settings and the distinction between these area. So please go back and watch that particular lectures on that topic. So resilience bring these together. It brings them together. It reinforces them in a way that help businesses to navigate period. So let's look at organizational resilience in perspective. So resilience itself is beyond risk management. That's one thing I want to mention. And it's also about maybe mastering change that is occurring within the business environment. These are also powerful. Mastering change within the business environment is also another aspect. Long time thinking, or thinking in terms of long time, or thinking long time, these are also another areas that we need to consider. And learning from experience. Resilient organizations are able to learn from experience. It could be from their own experience or experience of others. So we're going to explain. So if when you look at beyond risk management, for instance, you're looking at situations where resilience is essential to business survival. I've mentioned that. However, this has likely been in the context of risk prevention and recovery. Resilience is not just about risk prevention and recovery; it is also more about look beyond risk management towards holistic views of the organization, of the business health and success. Look at other areas where opportunities may emerge from the business and see what we can do and how we can navigate, how to identify opportunities in the market, and how we can use our risk mitigations, our risk prevention to help towards that, and also put up appropriate plans and procedures in place to get businesses to work. These are really important stuff that managers need to be thinking about and see what they can do for their organizations. Not just think about risk prevention or recovery alone, but try to ingrain within the organization some element of innovation, some element of creativity, some element of dynamic capability that can help businesses to spot new opportunities in the market, within the market. So having that holistic views of the way the head of the business, in terms of the financial head of the business, where the business is, and in terms of the success, competitive advantage in the market. So resilient is tied to that, is tied to all these other aspects within the business. And of course, a resilient organization should not only survive over the long time, but they should be able to flourish and pass the passing phase of time. And that's really what resilient organizations will usually do. And one of the things is the in the sense that resilient organizations are more of a Darwinian in the sense that they adapt to changing environments. They can change. They are like chameleon. They can change in order to remain fit for purpose over the long time. What has happened to many organizations, for example, in the case of COVID, for example, you've seen situations where some companies are not fit for purpose anymore because the pandemic has disrupted their very existence. They disrupt their core purpose, the reasons why they exist. For example, if we consider situations where companies like Airbnb, for example, that leverage on the sharing economy where accommodation is being shared, and now you look at lockdown situations where regulations that are in place in many countries where it may be impossible for households to be able to share accommodations and all that. That is already having a fundamental disruption in the core function of that particular organization. And that is why resilient organization will be able to sense and adapt to the changing environment in order to remain fit for purpose over a long time. So that is why I said it is beyond risk management in that sense. Does that really make sense to you? I hope it does. And and so we're also looking at resilient organizations as something in a way that you're looking at mastering change, resilient mastering change. looking at adopt excellent habits. You have that best practice to deliver business improvement all the time, right? All the time. Business improvements are at the core of what that organization does. And also trying to embed it. I've mentioned this around competence and capabilities throughout the business and throughout the organization, from the supply chain, from product to service to people and processes, from the vision of the organization to value to culture and behavior. Try to embed competence and capabilities in every aspect of the organization. So master of change. So what that is what is crucial. That is what is at the heart of every resilient organization in a sense. So normally you will find that is usually continually achieved over time through a number of elements. We look at ongoing relationship and interaction, for example, with all stakeholders is actually part of it. And change management, for example, managing change is part of one of the topics that we taught over in the course of this module at some point in time. So again, resilient organizations are able to master change in this particular regard. So that's being said, so resilient organization mastering change and all that is not a one-off exercise. I should mention that it's not a one-off. It's not something we do. We say, oh, today we are fantastic. We've done it. We get it. And that's it. So this is not about that. It's much more than that. Again, remember long-term thinking. Resilient organizations have that. Ensure the long-term survival of a company. So that's what resilience is about: being able to bounce back, being able to prosper, being able to thrive in the midst of chaos, in the midst of adversity, in the midst of crisis and disaster. So the real test of success is not short-term result, but the ability to deliver good result consistently, consistent over time. That's the retest of it over an extended period, over time. That's what makes resilient organization resilient. It's not because they're able to deliver success within a short time, but good results consistently over an extended period of time. And thinking only about a long time could cause actually short-term disruption. So resilient organizations are very mindful of that. So they need to balance short-term goals with long-term thinking as well. So that's really crucial. And in certain part of the world, long-term thinking is more common, but in certain other part, some Japanese company, for example, could create 100-year plans, and why few businesses have the resources to take such a far-sighted view. There are cases where, for example, some organizations put on a short-term approach. So, and this mostly happens within the Western business world, and as the literature typically suggests. Now, I talked about the fact that resilient organizations also learn from experience, learning from experience. And one of the early writers and philosophers observed that experience is not what happens to a man, it is what a man does with what happened to him. I say that again: experience is not what happened to a man, it is what you do with what happened to you. It is not what happened to you that matters, it is what you do with it. What you do with it. So, what are you going to do with what you have now? So resilient organizations are able um, to look at not just what happened. So resilience is not about what happened to the organization. This is what the organization does with what happened to it. So as a manager, you have a responsibility to make sure that your organization learn from failure, learn from experience, learn from crisis, learn from experience of others, and you could able to use that experience, use that learning, document that learning, reformulate your strategy to make sure that your organization fit for purpose. That's the essence of the learning. There is no learning has take place if you don't actually make it actionable. And I did a research around actionable learning from crisis. You may want to read my book chapters on that particular topic, actionable learning from crisis, where I developed that particular framework. So one of the things as well you may want to look at is also the most resilient organizations are eager to learn from their own and others' experiences to mitigate risks. And this is well established in the literatures actually. And the fact that learning from collective experience through peer-to-peer networking and knowledge sharing is vital, in particular when businesses actually seek to penetrate new and unfamiliar markets. So this is absolutely fundamental and crucial. And they found that resilient organizations are very flexible and proactive. They are saying, they are anticipating, they are creating, they are taking advantage of new opportunities in the market is something that when managers needs to be aware of, managers needs to be very familiar with, and try to see what they can do and how they can navigate it. And this is really important for every managers to be able to do that. And in this part, so what are the features of resilient organizations? I've talked about the fact that they need to be proactive approach. Are you willing and prepared to adapt before being forced to do so? Like COVID-19 is forcing many organizations to adapt now, to re-examine their core functions, to see whether they can remain fit for purpose and develop into new markets and look for opportunities there. So proactive in natures, this is one of the features of resilient organization. Dynamic leadership, do you have support from the top of organization to embed process from the CEO downward? So these are some of the issues that are core at the heart of resilient organizations. Are you responsive to change? Are you listening to market and industry needs? So organization needs to be able to do that, because consumer needs are constantly changing, and their priorities are changing as well. So organization needs to be aware what they need to do. These are really important. Strong corporate culture. Do you include and recognize everyone's responsibility and contribution to the business? Do you have that strong corporate culture? And this also leads to issues around risk culture of the organization as well. So these are some of the features of resilient organizations in that sense. And keeping focus. So is there a clear vision, purpose, and identity for the business? Right. Most resident organizations do have this, have if correct answers to these questions. Most resident organizations have correct answers to these questions. And this is the question that you need to be asking your organizations. This is the question that you need to be asking yourself. And long-term views, are you planning to avoid maybe solely responsibility to short-term financial goals? So you obviously, as a manager, you should be able to provide answers and provide some things, insight into some of the questions, and see what you can do about them. That being said, so different frameworks of resilience, organizational resilience. But the question is, we've seen issues around the fact that organization, do you say, are you informed of what is happening within the business environment? This is coming from the British Standard, 65,000, British Standard 65,000. That's the British Standard 65,000 on organizational resilience. Start with be informed. How resilient is the organizations? And you set direction, so you clarify the purpose and share understanding of that, of the organization's values and strategic priorities. And what happened is that you bring coherence to the organization. So you integrate risk management activities with the what I would call the operational discipline around the central plan. So that is to bring coherent different aspects of the organization. You bring them together and you bring them into the make them coherent in a way, and you develop adaptive capability, adaptive capacity, learning, training, and also issues of testing, very important in that particular order. And you want to shape the organization's embedded resilience into the organization DNA, and that is why it is absolutely important that resilience is not something that is you just talk about at the top management of organizations. It's different from crisis management that is left solo, maybe with crisis management team that have responsibility. It's ingrained. It has to be at the DNA, at the core DNA of the organizations. And of course, you need to review, validate, and review, assess where the organization is much more vulnerable, and you're trying to review them. You're trying to identify those areas, provide some improvement, and that will help the business to enhance their resilience. So at the heart of it is the issue of governance, is the issue of accountability, leadership, and culture, common vision and purpose. And these are really at the core of what makes organization tick, what makes organizations to be able to bounce back from adversity and resilience. So I hope that so far you've been able to follow me on this journey where we look at organizational resilience. And what happened here is that overall, the issue of context matter, the context of the organization, the industry in which the organization operates is very important. And also you need, if organization, you need, if you don't have a proper continuity governance instrument in place. You need to set that up. You need to be able to identify some interested party. Issues around leadership needs to be addressed. Evaluate your performance, and also embedded continuity culture. Business continuity culture, risk culture within the organization is absolutely key. And maximum acceptable outage, just the maximum risk that the organization is willing to take. Minimum business continuity objective as well. Organization needs to properly define that and set that into context, into priorities. So these are really fundamental stuff that businesses need to be aware of, should be able to do, and carry on with what they are doing. So I hope that have provided you with some insight into the nature of organizational resilience at this point. So in conclusion, so the natures of organizational resilience is still less understood and more work is needed in this particular domain. So I will encourage you to look at some articles relating to organizational resilience and see how you can apply. There are some suggestions, some frameworks, some approach you can put forward to help businesses to recover. And of course, in our next lectures, we'll be looking at strategic innovations, and that really ties into some of the things I've already talked about. But we see that there is benefit in terms of improved performance for organizations and productivities, and we also mention the issue of growth and sustainability and competitive advantage for organizations. So there is a broader implication for economy in terms of and also organization survival. We've also mentioned the implication for innovations and competitive advantage of business as well. So companies need to be able to look at the frameworks. Some of the frameworks I've already suggested. Different aspect components of what makes resilient, what makes organizations to be resilient in that regard. So as a manager, you have a responsibility to put up some of those tools in place that can help your business to recover from adversity. So there are a wide range of literatures around this area that you could pick up. If you've gone to science to write, you could pick up some things. But in the next lecture, you'll be looking at something really interesting. What we'll be looking at strategic innovations, and that really leads to some of pick up on some of the points I've already mentioned in these particular lectures. So I want to especially thank you for listening. So I'll be looking at strategic innovations in the next lecture, and I want you to start researching your assignment questions and try to maybe gather relevant articles. And while you do that, I also finally just want to encourage you to subscribe and just to support. I've created this to support you specifically. So if you haven't subscribed up, or you've been missing out on when I posted new materials and new updates on that channel as well. I'll be posting some extra case commentary apart from the pre-recorded lectures and use seminars materials that you do in the live sections, in this synchronous live section. So I'll be posting lecture summaries and other things, key insights and additional resources. These are backed by empirical evidence from research. So I will encourage you to subscribe, and don't forget, in the next lectures I'm going to see you again. Thank you so much for everyone that have continued to engage with the module, and I will see you in the lecture. Thank you so much.